Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Today we are presenting integrating experiential learning into the core curriculum with the leadership from the Office of Transformational Learning at the Smith School at the University of Maryland. I'm David Comisford. I'm the founder of EduSourced. We like to host these webinars from time to time and provide a platform for schools to talk about a topic that we're very obviously passionate about, which is experiential learning. And I think the folks at Smith have some really great content to share with you today about how they've taken experiential content and really baked it into the core of their curriculum. We will pause for questions in the middle of the session and then again at the end. So if you have any questions throughout, you can ask them through the questions box in GoToWebinar. So go ahead and click that in the GoToWebinar panel, enter your question as we go, and then when we pause, we'll read back those questions and give the presenting panel a chance to answer it. With that, I will turn it over to our first presenter, Sandra Laughlin, Dr. Sandra Laughlin from the University of Maryland. Sandra?
Thanks, David, and thank you all for joining us. We're going to go through a lot of content today, but I want to keep it as engaging as possible. So please do note questions that you have as they come up. I mean, I'm sure you know with webinars, you have a question and then 2 seconds later you forget what it was. So please do take a moment to note those in the questions box. So today I will be joined by 2 colleagues to discuss how we have integrated experiential learning into our core Smith curriculum. There are 3 basic components that we'll talk with you about. So the first is kind of like the backstory, how we laid the foundation for our work. And then Jonathan Southgate will share our timeline and successes, and Allison Netterveld will share our lessons learned and describe some of our ongoing challenges. Just to give you a sense of our context, so we are in the Office of Transformational Learning, and this is a new office that is designed to support innovative instruction at the Smith School. So we have essentially 4 functions. We coordinate AOL. We have faculty coaches to support faculty in engaging students and working through new kind of course structures. We have experiential learning and a small team devoted to that, which we'll discuss today. And we also have a team of course designers that do course development in the online and blended space. So we have our fingers in a lot of different aspects of the school, which you will see through this presentation was actually really helpful and critical to helping us get where we are today. So just to give you a sense of the transformation that we've experienced in this space. So in fall of 2015, we had, as I'm sure you do, many pockets of experiential learning throughout the Smith School, but we had 0 EXL, as we call it, in the undergraduate core and 0 in the MBA program, required experiences. Fast forward to what we project for fall of 2018. We still have those pockets of EXL around the college. We also have required EXL experiences in 82% of the undergraduate core and 17% of the MBA program. So as you can see, this has been a significant change. We have about 5,000 students here at Smith, and so this represents quite a lot of work. So I want to talk a little bit about how we laid the groundwork essentially for this change. So there were 2 aspects of this. So the first was to assess the current state of Smith, and the second was to imagine an ideal experiential portfolio for the college. So when the dean, Alex Triantis, asked us to take on this task, we started by figuring out what was already happening around the college. So we brought a bunch of stakeholders into the room, and first thing we did was define what we meant by experiential learning. As you know, there are many ways to define it. People talk about it quite a number of different things as as EXL, but we wanted to have a common definition so that we were all working under the same structure and for the same purposes. This is not to say that we excluded the things, that we stopped doing the things that were not in our definition. We just created separate metrics for those things. We also did a lot of talking to program heads, to faculty, to students, to try to get a sense of exactly what we were doing around the college. Maybe like your school, ours is largely decentralized, and so we don't always know what's happening. And so we tried to wrap our arms around that first. And then the last thing that we did was have extensive interviews with the stakeholders, largely faculty, who were already engaged in experiential learning. We wanted to know why. What were their excitements? Like what was working well for them? What were their challenges? What were their pain points and their gaps? So that we understood not only what we were doing, but how we were doing it. In the next phase of our groundwork, we took what we had learned and then looked for other opportunities or ideas for how we could get from where we were to where we wanted to go. And that involved researching top EXL programs around the country, both in the business space and outside of it. We also researched the literature on how students learn best in experiential opportunities. And so we had a lot of really great ideas that came from just talking to other people and asking good questions. But the next piece, I think, honestly, was one of the most significant things that we did. And it was to acknowledge that there are a number of other stakeholders around the college who actually have, who could benefit from experiential learning. So we went to all these, in red font, all these different areas and many others, and we asked them, what did they need? What were their challenges? What were their pain points? So that we could find a way and find opportunities to leverage EXL to support them. And I recognize that that might be an uncommon approach, but I highly recommend it. We learned a ton of really valuable things that significantly impacted the program that we ultimately developed and the partners with whom we work. So once we had done all of our research and our thinking, we came up with 3 design principles. Before we kind of went and built our strategy, we wanted to make sure that we were building it in a purposeful way to ensure the longevity and effectiveness of our work. So the 3 things: make it sticky, make it easy, and make it good. The first sticky thing was solving other people's problems. Classic change management. You haven't really changed an organization if when you leave, the change leaves with you. And so we set out from the very beginning to find partners and to incentivize them to partner with us because our efforts were helping them solve their problems. And the second piece of our stickiness effort was to leverage AOL. All of you have it, we certainly have it, and it is a significant source of curriculum management. And so it happened very naturally because our office does support this. But in hindsight, it was incredibly valuable to have a seat at those tables for each of the programs, because we were able to build relationships and identify opportunities to use EXL to help faculty meet the learning goals and objectives for their programs. In other words, we tried to do some of the work for them. And that, I think, leads into the second principle, which is making it easy. Faculty are busy, staff are busy, partners are busy, everyone's busy. And very few people are incentivized to do significantly more than they are doing right now. And so instead of creating, training resources, we decided to allow faculty and staff and partners to do what they do best. And our office would produce around them to weave together their efforts to create an integrated and effective EXL portfolio. That means that we wanted to hire people to build the bridge rather than ask faculty to do it. It means that we wanted to hire people to make it easy for our partners so that they didn't have a ton of work to do. And so that was a significant design principle, because that tied directly to the resource requests that we made later. But at the same time, we were very mindful of the fact that this was a pilot program. We were a brand new organization, and experiential learning can be extraordinarily expensive. So we decided to make it easy for the dean to give us what we asked by framing our efforts as pilots. If we can give us this amount of money for this amount of time, we are going to deliver this value to you. And this minimal upfront investment really required us to think very creatively about how we could thread the needle of maintaining high quality without breaking the bank from day one. The last design principle was ensuring that we made a good program, that we were doing good work. And so that entailed identifying, collecting, and clearly communicating metrics of impact and success. We're in a business school, and we have a focus on data-driven decision-making. And so we made it super easy for everyone to understand how we were measuring quality, and to see our progression against our desired metrics. And the other big piece was, and this sounds very simple, but it's quite critical, is just really having amazing customer service. If you make it easy but don't make it good, people aren't going to want to engage anymore. And so we, from the outset, made it clear to ourselves and to our staff and to everyone associated with this effort that we needed to ensure that faculty were happy, that students were excited, and that partners wanted to come back. And we would do this by ensuring that we delivered on what we promised in the way we promised to do it. So our strategy emerged from our research and from our guiding principles. And essentially our strategy, we can boil down into this pyramid. So on the left, you'll see real world messiness. This actually refers to a great Wall Street Journal article that came out a couple of years ago about live cases in business schools. And we thought it was a really fantastic way to think about an experiential portfolio more as a developmental pathway than a series of isolated activities. And so here's how we operationally defined each of these components. So first, at the highest level, which is I'm sure common for a lot of people, were the action learning projects and consulting projects, where we have students working on complicated long-term projects for their organizations or for a client. So these typically are, term-long projects, and there's a significant amount of problem solving that goes into them, as well as managing the dynamic context of business. So managing teams, managing managers, managing changing project timelines and deliverables. So that's the highest level. And we recognized that on day one, students were not going to be able to succeed in those kinds of projects. And so we decided to lay a foundation for their learning. So give them some training wheels, essentially, to handle the real world messiness by having 3 other levels of support. So at the base, we had just the foundational, like good teaching, dynamic learning environments, and learning anchored around real problems. So we have a guest speaker initiative where our office connects faculty who want business leaders in their classrooms to those leaders. So whether they're alums or partners, we think that having the business practitioners in the classroom on a regular basis helps set the foundation for students to succeed at the highest level of experiential learning. At the next level, we created this thing called live cases. Live cases are, it's kind of like an HBS case without the HBS case. In this model, we have partners who work with our team, as well as with the faculty members, to create a 75 or so minute case describing some of their current challenges. And so the structure is, it's kind of cool. So the partners work with us, the faculty work with us for a few months to create a case, with data or critical questions. And students learn about the company beforehand and get a sense of some of the case aspects, like the context in which the case exists. And then in the classroom, we have reps from the companies, usually a number of them, including some of our alums, who come and present the case challenge. And then students work in small groups to apply course content to solving these cases. And then the teams share out and get feedback on the feasibility of their ideas from the business leaders. This is a really low cost, high impact opportunity for students to interact meaningfully with business problems and business leaders. And at the next level, above this is the median level, which we call living cases. So these are live cases that exist over a longer period of time. So where the company is coming in, let's say 3 times in a semester at the beginning, middle, and end, to have that exchange with students on a more complicated case that addresses a number of areas in the curriculum. So with that strategy, we had to make some resource requests. There are 4 big things that we asked for initially. The first was people to help us develop the cases, collaborate with faculty and partners, so that the faculty and partners didn't have to do a ton of work, and we would still be able to ensure high quality engagements. We also asked for EduSourced. So one of the pain points that we encountered in talking with our stakeholders is that there was no central platform for partners to put case ideas in place, for faculty to request case, for alumni to offer to engage with the school. And so we found EduSourced to be incredibly helpful in creating that infrastructure, as well as supporting the cases that actually developed. So EduSourced, if you don't know, has some really cool project management features, and so we use those a lot in our engagements to help students ensure that they are delivering quality to the client. The third thing we asked for was help in sourcing some of the projects. Because we're starting small and as a pilot, we didn't want to go out and hire a bunch of people to source projects. Instead, we asked for some funds to allow us to work with a company called CapSource. CapSource, they do some great work. They engage with companies and they will source projects and scope them out. and deliver those projects to our team. And then our team massages those projects into the appropriate structure for the faculty that need the case. And last but not least, we asked for time. We did frame it as a pilot, and we had all these metrics, and we said, listen, we think we're going to do well at this. Here's what we mean by well, and here's the timeline that it will take us to get there. So if you could just give us a runway, and then publicly support this effort. You know, we don't have power over faculty, and so we leverage our relationships with them, but it was really helpful that the dean's office and the program heads and the department chairs were all vocally in support of this initiative. So that is the foundation of our efforts to move experiential learning into the core. And so now I want to give you an opportunity to ask any questions about what we've talked about so far. And then, of course, we will have a number of other, a lot more information from Jonathan and Allison. So if you have a question about that, I'll defer. But otherwise, I'd love to hear your feedback.
Thanks, Sandra. David here. I have a few questions that have come through. The first one's for me, and then we'll get into some of the audience questions. Could you talk us and the audience through how you define experiential learning? You mentioned a definition. Could you share that definition with us?
Oh, yes. Thanks, David. So we define experiential learning as in-curriculum opportunities for students to solve business problems through interaction with business leaders. So critical to our definition is having students having these things in our curriculum. So not a co-curricular case competition, but have it be graded and essential for their degree. The other piece of it was the interaction. We think that students learn best when they get feedback from real people with real practice. It's funny. We often have, in some of our live cases in particular, we'll have students who put out an idea that doesn't always make a ton of sense. And it's not because they don't understand their content, it's because they think about their content in an isolated manner. So when they're in a marketing class, they think about marketing. It doesn't occur to them that the supply chain aspect of the problem needs to be considered. And so students love this. They learn a ton from it. Faculty like it because it reinforces their concepts, and employers love it, or partners love it, because it gives them opportunity to really create value for students.
Great. And we have a couple questions asking, will the webinar recording and then also the slides be available? Answer is yes. They'll be posted early next week. We'll send an email out to everyone who participated with a link to that, and it'll be on our website at edusourced.com. The next question on the list, I'll try to ask this in kind of a logical order. Are there some examples of delivering high quality without breaking the bank would be helpful. So I think that question is getting at what are some of the metrics, or how are you judging delivering high quality and doing it in a way that's cost efficient? Would you be able to answer that, Sandra?
Yeah, I think so. I think the real cost efficiency in our portfolio comes from our live cases. So the consulting projects, you can only have so many students on a team, and those teams need to be very carefully managed. So those experiences are always going to be kind of expensive. But the live cases are, we can do a ton of them for not a ton of money. So we, again, our cost is in our design team, who works with the partners and the faculty members. But as Jonathan will describe, we can do quite a few of these for the cost of 2 people's salary. So I think that is the really significant way in which we have found opportunities for students to engage with business leaders in real time for a relatively low cost.
Okay, the next question is, what did you learn from the other stakeholders you mentioned that really impacted your decisions? Can you provide any specifics?
Yeah, we learned a lot. So we learned from our career services office that companies were dying to get into the classroom, but there was no structured mechanism or way for them to do that. We learned from our development team that donors really wanted to interact with students, and that alumni wanted to give back. And so when we were designing our strategy, we really kept that in mind. And we partner very closely with those offices to ensure that we are doing our best to help them solve their problems.
Okay, questions are coming in really fast, so I think we're going to have to move on soon for time and come back to it at the end. There is a question I think is interesting. I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this or not, but I guess we'll throw it out there. What was your amount of seed money to get started? Is that something you could share or not?
Our seed funding was salaries for, initially it was for nobody. I did it for myself. But I guess when we really got going, it was the equivalent of one FTE staff. So in that case, it was, roughly $70,000.
Okay, and one more quick one, and then we'll come back to the rest of them at the end. In terms of resource requests, how did you incentivize faculty to participate?
Yeah. We can't incentivize faculty. They don't get paid to work with us. Instead, we leverage our relationships. We have because of the numbers of things that we do with faculty, we know quite a few faculty members. There are about 200, and we have, I would say, deep relationships with probably 130 of them. So we started with that, but we also ensured that we were sharing we gave them good rationales for helping us out, right? So students love experiential learning when it's done well, and faculty are motivated by their course evals. And so we said, listen, we can't promise, but we think that this is going to increase students' perceptions of the relevance of your course. Not that it's irrelevant, but we know that you can never make it relevant enough. And so we kind of leveraged our friends and gave them a good reason to engage with us. And then when we showed value to them, we took that on the road to all of the other people with whom we were not working originally to say, look, X, Y, and Z faculty members had a great time. Their partners were these amazing companies, and look at the student satisfaction. This is a big win. Want to play with us?
Awesome, thank you for that. And I guess in the interest of time, let's go ahead and move on with the presentation, and then we'll get to the remaining questions at the end.
All right, so hi everyone. This is Jonathan Southgate, Program Manager for Experiential Learning. And in this section, we'll be talking more about the operational side, like the timeline of how we rolled this out, how we took this vision and operationalized it. And we'll talk about some of our successes and some of the ways that we have learned how to do things more efficiently. So first off, with the growth of experiential learning. So all of this started back in the spring of 2016. Back then, we were at that previous state that Sandra was talking about, and this idea for having experiential learning and live cases specifically was very new and innovative. And so we had our first live case in the spring of 2016. Now, we were very strategic about who we decided to work with initially. We worked with a faculty member who we had a great relationship with, as Sandra mentioned, and that was really engaged with experiential learning and wanted to have a good experience. And so we had her buy-in. And then we had a company who was also very interested in having those connections with the school and had expressed interest in similar activities. And so we brought the two of them together to come up with our first case. And so our first live case was spring 2016. And from that success, we then were able to expand to other courses. And our strategy was to focus primarily on our core curriculum. That has the most impact because it touches the most students at our undergraduate and MBA side. And so, through our successes, we were able to then launch our first MBA live case in the spring of 2017. And this was done because the faculty member for that course had experience with the undergraduate side. So in everything that we've done, we've leveraged our previous experiences, which have all gone well, to then propel further development in other areas of the school. So once we've established this program of experiential learning with the live case, and live cases have become more and more integrated into the curriculum, at least at the core course level, we were able to then start leveraging consulting engagements, which, as Sandra mentioned, are more engaging and more involved on both the faculty side and the employer side, or the partner side. So we need a little bit more buy-in for consulting type projects, and so using our success in the live case, we were able to leverage that into our consulting. This has culminated in this semester with our MBA capstone. So in the MBA program, there's this push to have experiential learning throughout all of the curriculum at the MBA level. And one of the easiest ways we've been able to do that is to have a integrative capstone at the end of the MBA program. Integrative meaning that the students in that course will use all the skills that they've learned in all of the different courses and tracks that they've taken and apply it to a single problem. And this single problem is with a local business, typically, that has real world messy problems that the students can actually dig into and solve for the companies. So this is our first semester with the MBA capstone, and thus far it's been working very well. And our anticipation for the fall, as you can see, is to increase up to 18 live cases and 10 consulting projects. These numbers are based on our current conversations. So we're constantly working with new partners and finding new faculty to make these matches come together. So to touch on assurance of learning. So one way that we were able to get faculty buy-in was to tie into their AOL assessments, but also looking at how we can leverage what they already use in the classroom to the most effect. So for certain faculty members, that means that we take a case that they're already using in the class, and we simply take that case and the learning objectives associated with that case and apply it to a live case with a real company. And so that's an easy fit for them. It doesn't take anything away from their course, but it adds a lot of value. And as you can see with these numbers, these are based off of our evaluations that the students provide us. There's generally a lot of positive reaction to these live cases, specifically around these metrics that the AOL learning objectives are looking at. So we use this evidence to then go back to the faculty and say, this is how live case and now consulting projects are able to help you move forward in your evaluations and assurance of learning and all of that. All right, now we're going to move on. So another aspect of it is our student satisfaction, right? So how do the students see this? And this is the results of a cumulative survey across all the different live cases that we did last year. And we had a response of 471. And as you can see here, there's a very high percentage of people, of students who say that they see this as being attractive to employers. They understand how what they're learning in the classroom in these live cases and consulting help them in their career search. It also is interesting to note that they find that it also helps them learn the concepts they are learning in the classroom better. And this is evidenced anecdotally from faculty members who say that they have noticed a marked increase in the ability of students to use what they've learned in new situations down further in the semester after the live case. So it's really important to us to make sure that the live case and the consulting project are integrated fully into the course in a way that augments and makes the learning better and does not replace any components. So this is just one of the quotes that we like from one of our undergraduate students, and as you can see, it really speaks to another aspect of the live case that we find helpful. It's that we help the students see that what they're learning in a marketing class, like Sandra said, does not have to be just about marketing. In fact, a lot of our live cases are not purely connected to the course or the company that they're in. So for example, in one of our core accounting classes, we have a live case with a consumer products company, and the case question is on marketing. And it's in an accounting class, so the students have to use accounting principles to understand how best to market a product. And so, you know, moving beyond this idea that the case has to be connected directly to what the course is teaching or the company does is something that you know, a lot of students find very helpful to them. So this is just you know, an example of all the companies we've worked with. We have several others as well, but these are the ones we could fit on the screen. And something we like to say is that you know, we've seen companies come back enthusiastically time and time again. They're always a bit hesitant at the beginning, obviously, because they're taking a risk in coming in front of the students. But our role in OTL is to make them look good. That's what we say. That's kind of our motto inside our office, and we strive to make that happen. And because of that, we have had 100% return rate for all of our partners. And there's no signs that any partner is not thinking about continuing these engagements into the future. And on the flip side, we have the same success rate with the faculty. Again, it's a very similar situation where the faculty are a bit hesitant at the beginning. They don't understand how this is going to tie in. There's a lot of misconception about how this experiential learning, either consulting or live case, is different from other traditional business cases, things like that. But once we work with them and we show the value that these experiences provide to their students, they are enthusiastic about coming back for that particular course, but more importantly, in other courses that they teach, especially in different programs. So we have undergraduate faculty who want to incorporate this into their MBA course that they teach. And that's a way that we are able to grow exponentially, is that we build on those relationships and leverage them to then expand into new programs and courses. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Allison, who's going to be talking about lessons learned and our ongoing challenges.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Netterveld. I'm the Assistant Director for Experiential Learning here at the Smith School. I'm going to talk to you about lessons learned and some of the ongoing challenges that we've had. These are kind of my favorite things because this is where we really dig into the weeds of making things excellent, right? So lessons learned first. A few of these we've already talked about a little bit, and some of them were things that we incorporated in our initial design, but we really learned how valuable these initial pieces were. So the first is about gaining buy-in. As Sandra talked about, faculty are busy, and so the fact that we really made this as easy as possible for faculty to do, and for our partners as well, was huge for us, and it really allowed us to get their buy-in in a very different way than if we had been asking them to do something that took significant time. This really allowed faculty to kind of take their courses to the next level without actually adding a lot of work to their plate. Also important on the buy-in piece is the company buy-in. This was a real lesson that we learned because we got burned by a company who pulled out of an engagement midway through a semester. and that was harmful to our relationship with the faculty member in the class that we were working in. So it has become a core piece of our work to really understand what's driving a partner that we're engaging with. So that partner could be a donor or an alum who is really excited about the school and wants to engage. They could be interested in recruiting students or marketing to students, or they could need some actual consulting assistance. But whatever that is, it's important for us to understand their reasoning and be sure that we have some kind of meat there, some kind of a hook to make sure they're going to show up on time when we need them, and not pull out last minute. We've also, as a kind of a side benefit of that, have seen some deepened engagements with the companies that we've been working with in other areas, such as donations they're giving to the school. So getting that company buy-in and understanding what it is they really want has helped them feel very supportive and happy in the engagement, and have kind of allowed them to be more fully engaged with the school. Buy-in from the school is also an important piece. Sandra talked a lot about that part, about how we are really metrics focused and wanted to show a return on the investment that the school gave to us. It's also been important for us to be really transparent with the school when we hit road bumps, when we come to a point where we can't really increase our capacity anymore and we need to make another investment in a new staff member or something else. That conversation has been constant and has allowed us to continue to grow in a really sustainable way. All right, lesson number 2 was to start slowly. So you can see we started with one live case. Sandra was the one who did it, and Jonathan and I were working on other projects, and we slowly came in the second semester to support live case, but we didn't really do anything that required a big investment initially. We started with something that was pretty easy. Live case is relatively low stakes. It doesn't require a lot of time from the partner or from the faculty, and it allowed us to just provide a really great service with something that was small stakes and a low investment, and give really great service and get to the point where now folks are just super excited to work with us, and we basically can't give them enough. The third lesson was design with the end in mind. So this was part of what came out of the conversations that Sandra had with stakeholders, was what is our goal here? And our goal, we realized, was really about getting students jobs. So we started from the framework that everything we do is about getting students jobs and allowing them to be really successful in those jobs. So we design all of our engagements around those ideas. And then the last lesson is about managing expectations. And this really is a huge piece for students. Students don't always know. This is live case in particular is something that's very new to them. They don't yet know what they are. And we have live cases in courses that are, courses open to the entire university. So students may be coming from other parts of campus and have not interacted with the business school. So a lesson we've learned is around managing expectations for students about what's expected of them in a live case, what preparation they need to do beforehand, and what they're going to get out of it, and the importance of a live case to their learning. All right, and ongoing challenges. So there are 3 particular kind of audiences that we have some ongoing challenges with: faculty, our partners, and students, which are the 3 audiences that we're engaging with, so that's not surprising. But with faculty, really our kind of biggest ongoing challenge is the constant need for us to be on the ground and explaining what it is that we're doing. So despite the fact that we're working with a huge number of faculty, a lot of them still really don't understand what it is that we do, what a live case is, what we're doing to support consulting. We're still a reasonably brand new office, so we're only a few years old. So that constant ground game is something that I think will be around for a long, long time. I think it'll be a while before people really have an understanding of what it is that we do. And even then, new faculty coming in will need to learn what it is that we're doing and what we can offer for them. The next 2 challenges are really about the interactions between the faculty and the partners. So one is that ideal timelines for faculty aren't necessarily ideal timelines for staff or for the partners that we're working with. So we've been, kind of moving things around, find the ideal timelines for how we are making matches happen. We find that this is particularly difficult for the spring semester. With the fall, we have a lot of lead time with summer beforehand, but in the spring semester, the lead time is a little more difficult. Campus is closed for a week for holidays, and folks aren't around, and they're traveling, and winter session is happening, and there's just not a lot of downtime for folks to be working on new projects for the spring. So we found that we have a significantly larger number of new cases in the fall than we do in the spring each year because of those timelines, and that's still a challenge that we're working through. The other challenge between those two is just the one-to-one matching. So sometimes we have more partners than we have faculty, sometimes we have more faculty than we have partners. So kind of figuring out that matching system has been a little bit tricky. We are excited about EduSourced is working with us to create a Salesforce integration, and we are starting to utilize Salesforce now for a lot of other metrics keeping. And so we're excited about how that partnership is going to help us really increase our ability to match in a much more efficient way. And then our last challenge is around students. So this is something I just touched on with lessons learned. How do we get students to really understand the real value of experiential learning, that it's not just networking with a company? This is something that we're working hand in hand with our career services office on. It's something that's really important to me, and that I'm dedicated to kind of changing the culture within the Smith School around how students view their experiential learning opportunities, so that they see these as an opportunity for growth and success on their future job, rather than as just an opportunity to get a job. So that designed with the end in mind piece, where it was jobs, it's not just about getting it, it's also about being successful in the job. And that's that success part is the part we want students to understand. All right, I think that's it. So we are ready, David, for our second round of questions.
Thanks, Allison. And we have a bunch of them, but keep sending these in because we can respond in a written format after if we don't have time to get to it. The first question is, what evaluation metrics were most powerful in showing the impact of EXL?
Oh, that's a great question. And it's also an evolving one. So initially it was how many people are engaging in our various EXL activities, which is important because we wanted to show that our work was touching people. But then we began to say, well, what about the quality of what we're doing? How is it tied to solving, AOL issues, or, when a company or a partner engages with us, do they deepen their engagement in other areas of the school? So, if they're a new company, do they reach out to the development office or the career office? And because, spoiler alert, they did, we now are starting to track, our dollars. So dollars that come into our program. There are quite a few other metrics that we track. Another great one is in some classes we've been able to actually drill down into the students' final deliverables, their exams or their projects, and look to see whether there was delta on the topics on which they had the live case or the consulting project. And what we've seen is that I think, as Jonathan mentioned, we are seeing that. So students not only are enjoying it, but they're actually learning more from those experiences, and we have some great data to back that up.
Great, thanks, Sandra. Next question is, what do you do to prepare and support your partners?
Partner specific or faculty and partner?
Well, yeah, and it doesn't specify. I took it to mean partners as in your corporate and small business organizations.
It's similar for both sides, so I'll just use that. So what we do is we handle all of the instructional work that goes into the case, right? So we ask good questions, and we have a series of questions that we use in every engagement to understand not only what the business is willing to work on, but also what they are able to do within the time frame that we have. And at the same time, we do this a similar question session with the faculty to understand exactly what they want out of this engagement. what are the learning outcomes that they want? What are the things that they want their students to be able to do with the information? And from there, we ask, again, pointed questions to get the data we need and the stakeholders we need to put together a case. So to answer the question about how we interact with partners and how we help them through the process, I'd say it's really about showing them the way to a successful business case, live case. And it's honestly a lot of work on our end, but that is our purpose here. So
I will also say, I want to jump in here, that when we have a company that's going to be in a classroom with students, we offer them coaching on how to facilitate a session, which they have found, for the most part, quite helpful. I think.
And it's our job to make them look good in front of the students. And so we are very cognizant of that, and we make every effort to ensure that they're prepared and ready to present in front of the class.
And the other, I mean, we support them down to, we build the PowerPoint deck and we structure it so that there are opportunities for student engagement. We build the handouts. We do everything that we can outside of creating or identifying the content. That comes from the faculty and the partners.
Thanks, guys. Next question is, how many faculty, the screen's moving as I talk since questions are coming in. The next question is, how many faculty and courses accepted top of the pyramid projects?
That's a really good question. So there's a lot more experiential learning than our office supports. So there's a bunch of stuff that goes on outside of our space. But I think at this point, we have, let's see, we've gotten it into what,
At least
four of the capstones.
4 MBA.
In the MBA. Yeah, and in the undergrad space, there's a couple. But I think what's really critical to note is that, and this is all about AOL. So our MBA curriculum was just redesigned last year. And prior to the redesign, there was no required experiential component. Now, because of the value that we've created for faculty who manage the curriculum, we are in the position, they decided to have one required experiential full-on course. Each of the 4 tracks elected to take their capstone and make it experiential in like consulting projects. And then that's on top of the live cases that we have. So this is we've only been working on this for, I don't know, 6 months, maybe not that long, but we're already seeing a lot of uptake. And so I expect that in a year from now, our numbers are going to be very different.
And we also lead out of our office 2 of those high-level consulting experiences in undergraduate courses. So altogether, we're reaching currently about 4 classes in the MBA space and 4 classes in the undergraduate space.
Next question is really open-ended, so take this how you will. What have been the downsides?
That's a good question. We're staring at each other because we actually, I don't know if I know of any downsides. I mean, no, that's not true. There is one downside, and that is it's a lot of work. And so our team is constantly taking on new projects, hiring new people, supporting new programs, trying out new things. And so I guess the downside, if I wouldn't probably call it that, but a consideration is that it can be exhausting. And so for us, it's just really essential to ensure that we have the right people in the right positions. But I can't think of anything else.
The only downside that I can think of that we have brought up, and it hasn't been a downside so far, and I don't anticipate it to be one, but if these experiences are not designed well, then it reflects poorly on not only the companies in the eyes of the students, but also on the faculty. And so that is...
and reflects poorly on the school in the eyes of the company.
Exactly. So I think the downside of this is that
It's a big risk.
there's a lot of risk involved.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not done correctly, or not, I don't want to say correctly, but if it's not done well, and if you don't understand what well means to your school, then you run the risk of having subpar experiences for your students. So I would say that's the only major risk out there that we've been able to avoid so far, and I anticipate to continue to avoid. Yeah, that's what I would say on that.
The next two questions are related, so I guess we'll put these together. How would you recommend identifying partners, and do they buy in any financial way? And then related to that, are you charging for any of these partners for either the live cases and or the consulting projects? And if so, how much? If, of course, and I'll add this at the end, if you're willing to share how much you charge.
Right. So it's interesting because we don't, so we have had a number of partners who have, as we like to say, deepened their engagement with the school, but we keep our hands out of that. That is our development team. We, sometimes we get an email saying, hey, you've gotten some donations, and we're very excited about that, but that is not our goal. We just make it easy for other people to achieve their goals. In terms of picking partners, we use the same strategy. Start with your friends. Start with companies that are already hiring your students and are investing time in recruiting. Start with your corporate donors who are probably also recruiting. Start with people that you're friends with, your alums. We actually have begun working a lot with local businesses in the College Park area, which is also really fun and cool, and everyone just has a little bit of skin in the game. And so starting with those companies is really essential because, as Allison indicated, you don't want this to go sideways. You want to make sure that if you promise the faculty that someone's going to be there and do an awesome job on Tuesday, that someone's there and does an awesome job on Tuesday. So I can't stress enough the importance of working with partners that want to work with you.
And I will say the one partner that burned us was a partner we didn't have a solid relationship with. That it was a risk that we were taking because it was a big, interesting company, and we got burned on that. So that was a lesson we learned in a hard way. Is that it's really, really important for us to make sure there is an existing relationship and a really solid reason that partner wants to be involved in the classroom.
Great, thanks guys. The next question is for part-time MBAs. The goal isn't getting students jobs. With that said, will this model work without that objective? And I would add to that, I've seen survey data that this type of hands-on company-based learning is a lot less prominent in part-time MBAs than it is in the full-time. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do actually. So it's interesting. We had just a focus group with a bunch of our part-time MBA students a few months ago, and we were asking them, what would you like to see us do more of? And the number one answer was experiential learning. And when we drilled down to kind of figure that out, we realized that it was because it wasn't that they necessarily needed jobs. They had jobs. Some of them wants to change that job. So, I still think that applies to those people. But it was because as working professionals, they understand that theory doesn't always work in practice. And so for them, it's really essential and beneficial to their learning to not just get the theoretical frameworks and basic parameters, but to see the interplay of those things in a real project or a real challenge, and to understand the limitations of what they're learning and be able to problem solve around those limitations and challenges. So, this is, it helps us, we like jobs. It's important. I think everyone in business schools are very oriented towards students and getting jobs. But honestly, it's not just about jobs. It's about learning and engagement and the ability to put into practice what you've learned in the classroom. And so I would say, and the MBA, the part-time MBA students in our focus group agreed that this is not just for full-time students. This is for part-time students too.
And I want to add 2 points to here. One is that I think the emphasis on success in the job, not just the job, is really important, as Sandra was saying. But also, we haven't moved into the part-time MBA space really on this. And the reason for that isn't necessarily that we don't think it's not useful or important there, or that students wouldn't want it. It's mostly because of logistics. So getting company partners into classes in the evenings and weekends when those courses are held is much, much more difficult than getting them during the day during their normal working hours. So that's honestly been our biggest roadblock there. It's something that we're looking at because we are invested in doing this in those spaces as well, but we just haven't had a chance to really figure out how to make that work yet.
Yeah, we are actively developing a new type of engagement, which would allow partners to engage in real time with students, but not necessarily physically in that space. And so, again, by this time next year, we expect to have kind of a new way of doing experiential learning that is specifically designed for these non-traditional populations.
Okay, final question, and then again, we've got others we'll get to in email, so keep an eye out for that if we didn't get to answer your question. These two are related, so we'll kind of combine. How do you control the quality of deliverables? And I take that to mean for your hands-on consulting and capstone projects, not the live cases. And then the next related question is it about learning engagement from the partner side? Clearly, it is interesting to the students, but what does the partner get out of it?
So to answer the first question about deliverables in the consulting space, based on how we developed our consulting engagements, there are assignments that are tied to those deliverables. And so there are active grading rubrics and other things for the deliverables to the company. So it's a lot more interactive with the faculty member. They do quality control on the deliverables before the companies even see them. So on that front, it's essentially like any other assignment. Now for the other question, for the partner, like we've said, it depends on what their interest is. Some are just interested in giving back to the school. If they're alums or donors or other folks like that, they just want to have a good learning experience for the students, and that is truly their driving force. Now, for the partners that are still interested in that, but mostly interested in recruitment or other activities like that, we make the case, and we make it very strong, and a lot of them see it this way now, is that having a good learning experience for the students plays into having that recruitment, that image, that good image in front of the students, that then drives recruitment. So we make it, it's all about how we pitch it to them, right? And it depends on what their driving force is. And so if they're in for recruitment, good learning environment leads to more recruitment. If it's about learning and that's what their driver is, then we stick to that and make that case clear to them.
I do also want to say that for some of these engagements and partners, depending on the partners, the insight into their company is really valuable, especially for the smaller companies. So they may not go with whatever the final recommendations of the students is, but they always come out with something valuable. We've noticed even with we teach a course internally that's basically consulting for faculty within the Smith School that students do, which is a really cool, fun course, but a topic for another day. And we've seen even with that, when faculty don't take everything fully, they always get some kind of an insight. So these students have a different perspective and a different point of view than what the companies are used to, and they get value out of that for sure.
Great. Well, thank you guys. And again, I'd like to thank our presenters, Dr. Sandra Laughlin, Jonathan Southgate, and Allison Netterveld from the University of Maryland Smith School. Thank you all for attending. Keep an eye out for the email recapping the session, and check out our website, EduSourced.com, early to mid next week, and we will have all of this content posted, including Q&A. So thank you all so much, and have a great rest of your day.